Hello, Psychologies magazine friends, readers, subscribers, or people who've just stumbled across us. My name is Mary Fenwick, and I write the Agony column for Psychologies magazine. Hello, Sam joined. I recognise some of these names. Sarah, Angela, Sonia, Vic. Hi, welcome. I'm just introducing myself. My name is Mary Fenwick. I write the Agony column for Psychologies magazine. And each week on a Tuesday at 5:30, I am dropping in for an Instagram live where I'm available to answer your questions. That's what I do once a month. There's 3 questions that I answer in the magazine, and we are experimenting with how it is to open up this opportunity for readers to ask any questions or share any stories or experiences in an Instagram live on a Tuesday at 5:30. So for those who don't know it, Psychologies magazine is the UK's biggest best-selling mindful living magazine, and we are putting a lot of focus on creativity and hope in this period of time. And Susie Walker, who's the editor-in-chief, has done an amazing job of creating a really connected community. So please let me know where you're joining from, say hello, and if you are joining with any questions, let me know what your questions are. Today, this is my plan for these Instagram lives. I will have something that I'm planning to talk about, but I'm open to any questions or stories that you want to share. So today, what I'm going to talk about is, I think it's a funny week this week. I think it's the week where a different form of reality might be hitting us, that some people are starting to get back to what they might have thought was a bit more normal. I've just been into town locally where I live to get some more earphones for my phone, and it's interesting being around people again, but it still feels very different. And I'm wondering how it is for people who are maybe starting to come out of even shielding, or people who are starting to get into a routine with their children going back to school. So any questions, stories, experiences, what is it like for you at the moment? And I'm going to talk today a bit about how we can be when things are not going the way we wanted, planned, expected. How can we, how do we roll with it? How do we roll with it when it's not in the plan? Now, I sometimes say that I'm a bit of an expert on not in the plan, because I actually, I have 4 children. So growing up, I always wanted to have children, and there was a particular family at school who had 4 children, and I was kind of jealous of them. There was just me and my brother, and I thought a family of 4 looked like fun, looked like you'd always have somebody to play with. I've ended up with 4 children, not in the way that I expected. I gave birth to 3 of them, and the oldest is my stepdaughter. So that's, here we are, a therapist at the Priory, and I was very excited shopping. Touching new clothes and makeup, talking to friends, felt new and different, but soon got back into it. Oh, wow. So that sounds like a great story. Sorry, I missed your name. I'm just going to see if I can get it. Mandy Jassel, based in Dubai, a therapist at the Priory. Oh, wow. Very excited shopping. Hi, Anthea, Rosie. I'm inviting people to share their experiences of getting back to something like a bit of normal this week. And I'm talking in general about Hi, Anila Chowdhury. I'm talking in general about how we cope with things which are not in the plan. And I was talking about how there's ways in which I'm a bit of an expert at not in the plan. I have ended up with 4 children, but not in the way that I expected. I never planned to be divorced, I have to say. That, and a while ago, 15 years ago, hello, Anne Thorne, had my first hair appointment today. Lovely but strange talking through masks. Yeah, I'm still fundamentally in my lockdown hair. It's all clipped up. Lovely but strange, yeah. Thank you, Anne. Where was I? Oh, certainly never planned to be divorced. My mum has just come into Vic is saying, my mum's just come into our house again today for the first time since lockdown started. Been lovely. Oh, this is terrific. Everybody's got really lovely stories about getting back into something a bit more normal. I was talking about how we react when things are not going according to plan, but it sounds as if everybody's been pleasantly surprised so far, the people who are sharing their stories. If your experience is different from what's being described, please don't hesitate, because another thing I'm interested in is what's the environment in which we feel we can tell our story. You know, we've just had 3 really positive stories about going shopping, seeing somebody seeing their mum and somebody getting their hair done. I know that this will not be a wholly positive week for everybody, and I want to encourage you to share that and tell us about it, even if it's not such a happy story as these first 3 that we've heard about. I was starting to talk about not in the plan in general, and I was talking about the fact that my first marriage ended in divorce, and that was definitely not in my plan. I found that devastating. Even though it was my choice, I still felt very profoundly a sense of failure and disappointment and the death of a dream at the fact that I was getting divorced, as I say, even though I was the one who wanted it. And some years back, I did a lot of research for a book about divorce, which in the end never got published. And I was, right, here we go. I'm going to tell you a bit about my divorce story when I finish reading this. Just hard to know the limit. Having my grandchildren in now, but haven't hugged yet, which is hard. Oh, I can't imagine that. An epidemiologist here in Canny, I'm not sure what that is, said, hold your breath for both when you hug. Right. That's really hard. I did see my stepdaughter, on one occasion where we didn't hug, and then the second time we did, she has, we know, already had coronavirus and recovered. She's 25, but that seeing people and not hugging, man, that's really, really hard. Thank you for sharing that. Lovely to see them, I guess. So talking about how we cope when things don't go according to plan. And I was saying that getting divorced in my first marriage was definitely not in my plan. And in fact, I ended up doing a lot of research for a book on divorce. And of all the people who I interviewed for their divorce stories, the only one who reported having this feeling in the lead up to the wedding, she reported having this sense of, oh, well, if it doesn't work out, we can always get divorced. And she had, in fact, stayed married. So I wasn't interviewing her for the divorce book, but for a kind of counter example. So there's a kind of myth for people who haven't been touched by divorce that it's too easy, people give up too easily, and that divorce is generally taking the easy way out. In my own experience and in the experience of everybody who I interviewed, that was not the case. Most people ended up saying that they felt that the only way to fix it would have been to not get married in the first place. They felt very profoundly that they'd made a mistake in marrying that person, but they had not had that feeling as they went into it. So not in the plan is what I'm talking about. And maybe I'm slightly talking about the stories that are harder to tell. As a journalist, I've always been interested in those stories. We get into a frame of mind where certain stories are easier to tell. Like at the moment, stories seem to be easy to tell about people who are just getting on with it and making the most of lockdown and maybe reinventing themselves or learning Mandarin or something, or doing really impressive swerves of their business, acquiring skills they never thought possible. Those are the stories which are kind of fitting in with the zeitgeist, with what people want to hear at the moment. And just warning you that my little social media timer is going to try and stop me in about 5 minutes. I'm going to override it. So, my name is Mary Fenwick, for those who are just joining. I write the Agony art column for Psychologies magazine, and that's a monthly column where I answer 3 readers' questions. We have started in the last few weeks doing a weekly wisdom session on a Tuesday at 5:30, and this is your opportunity to ask any questions of me, or to just share your stories and experiences, whether that's to do with lockdown, whether that's to do with work, family, relationships, worries, anything that you want to bring to share with the other people who are fans like you or have stumbled across Psychologies magazine. So I've been writing the Agony art column for Psychologies for, I think this is my 7th year, and it always feels like a massive privilege. I always feel really quite honoured that people feel I might have something to contribute, and I treat it as a bit of a challenge each time to pack in as much resource and information as possible, while also remaining kind. Kindness is a big watchword for us at Psychologies magazine. We are really keen on being kind and compassionate, especially when people are perhaps suffering. So I've come along today with an idea in mind that while I'm waiting to see if anybody wants to share any stories or questions or how it's been getting back to something like, I don't know, has it felt a little bit more normal this week wherever you are? Tell us where you are and tell us what your experience has been. And we're loosely talking about things which are not in the plan. And I guess overall, a global pandemic was not in anybody's plan. For some people, it's been like the opening up of a whole new way of working that they couldn't have imagined. And for other people, I feel extremely aware of this. For other people, it will have been extremely difficult, being stuck in a situation that you might not have chosen, whether that's a bad relationship or just a difficult physical living environment where you can't get outside. This is my invitation to you to share a little bit of how it is for you. This week, what is today? Today is the 7th of July, 2020. How is life landing with you today, 7th of July, 2020? One of the things I did last week was participated in a narrative workshop. And that's made me really conscious of the way we tell stories. This was in London. Well, I guess it doesn't matter anymore, does it? The workshop was run by an organisation called Narrative, which is spelt the way you might think, but with no E at the end. Jane and Dan, both from a theatre background. And Narrative as an organisation is on a mission to connect people through sharing personal stories. And they have a particular approach to how to tell a story. And the exercise that they did with us last week has really stuck in my mind, actually. We didn't introduce ourselves at the start of the session of this workshop, this storytelling workshop. What we did was an exercise about, I don't know, over halfway into the first, it was 2-3 hours, and over halfway into the first 3-hour session, we did an exercise where we introduced, we did introductions, but it wasn't introducing ourselves. We did an introduction telling the story of one of our grandparents. And if it was a person who'd been maybe adopted, you picked a person who'd had a kind of grandparent role in your life. Or you might have chosen to tell the story of somebody who played the role of grandparent, or maybe you knew part of the story of your birth parents or a birth grandparent. So the way we introduced ourselves, that was me having to adjust because I reached my limit. I'm still here. We introduced ourselves by telling a story from the perspective of our grandmothers or grandparent. I chose one of my grandmothers. And one of the really remarkable things was that this, going back to grandparents, for most of us, took the stories to nearly getting on to, if you talk about when that grandparent was born, at least 100 years ago. My grandmother was born in 1900. Other people, I guess they had a grandparent born in the 1920s or 30s. And we told our story. We told the story in 3 minutes. 3 minutes to tell the story of a grandparent, up from their birth to the time, finishing off with whether they were still alive or how they died, when and how they died. What was really remarkable about it was there were maybe 10 of us in this workshop, and the variety of grandparents. It was like somebody had a grandparent from Mauritius, Malaysia, Romania, Scotland, Ireland, England, mine from New Zealand, although her parents were from Ireland originally, and telling these stories, making these people come alive, including somebody had been in the First World War, had his arm amputated in a field hospital in 1916 or 17. The idea for those people that they could have all been in this same virtual room is kind of mind-blowing. And imagine if our grandparents could see what we have been living with in the last few months. Some of them may have been around during the flu epidemic, I guess, in just after the First World War, 1919. But their experience of it must have been so different from what our experience is today. So that was one of the things that really stuck with me from doing the narrative workshop last week. My name is Mary Fenwick. I write for Psychologies magazine. I write the Agony art column. And every week on a Tuesday at 5:30, I'm here to answer your questions live. If you have anything that you'd like to share, it might not be a question, it could be a story. It could be sort of musing, it could be asking other people what their experience is. And this week I've come wanting to talk about how we deal with things which are not in the plan, of which a global pandemic would be a startling example. And then building on that, how are we dealing with going back to some form of new normal? So this whole process of change, of adjusting to what we weren't expecting, didn't want, didn't ask for, how are we going with all of that? As I said, at any point, if you've got a question, comment or story, just drop it into the comments. I'm waving to people and I'm just checking whether anybody else... Oh, look, I have. Actually, it stopped scrolling. Here we go. Right. I was in exactly the same situation when I got separated and still haven't approached divorce until recently for that reason. Didn't want it, yeah. It took me 7 years to approach. Would not be in the plan. I'd be really interested to hear if you have anything that you want to say to other people about that. Because not all of our stories go this one direction, do they? I was reading, I think, what percentage? It's something like maybe even a quarter of families in the UK are headed by a single parent, and of those 90% are mothers. But I think Anne's talking about maybe having lost a child, which is the biggest pain that most of us can imagine. Thank you for sharing that, Anne, and I'm really sorry to hear about, well, just the hint of that backstory. Thank you for sharing it. Emma, Cutie Pie Claire, Andrea, hi, I'm just scrolling through. Mandy Jussel, thank you for sharing your experience. It's very sad. I trained with the Gottman Institute, and couples, which is fantastic. Yeah. I'm such a big fan of John Gottman. What helped? Well, divorce seems such a long time ago that the fact that I wanted it helped me enormously. By the time we were doing it, I wanted to be divorced. It was not a marriage I could have stayed in, and that was extremely helpful. And all of those 4 horsemen of the Gottman apocalypse were present for us, so that gave me a bit of clarity. Cheeky Mama, kids have been back to school for a few weeks now. Needed this. Yeah, lockdown started well and then it became mentally challenging. Glad everything is open and we can just get on. Much happier for it. It's Anne Thorne. I'm in Cornwall. I'm furloughed and feel very isolated and alone. Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that, Anne, and I'm glad that you're with us just at least for this. That sounds really tough, really, really tough, and I wonder what is helping you with that. I really do wonder what's helping you with that. If there's anything that you can share which you are finding is helping, I'd love to know. Rosie Buckingham, I've been working from home since mid-March and it's made me really appreciate having the extra time. I used to spend an hour each way driving to and from work. I'm hearing that quite a bit as well. Anna Taylor, I've come to a point, this is not Anna, sorry. My phone's overreacting when I touch it. I've come to a point where I'm able to recognise my feelings, bring them up to the surface and find a way to release them, especially the negative feelings. That sounds really constructive. Style Lyrical, hi, I think I found you by following Harriet Minter. I know that you have done some work with Harriet. That is such a wonderful exercise. I've got a mind blank about what the wonderful exercise is now. Thinking of anything that's helped, maybe. Just checking whether anybody... Daughters are a blessing. I felt so lost. I don't know, is that because of the pandemic or otherwise? I think it's easy to feel... It is easy to feel lost. It's easy to feel that your story is not being told. As I said, I think... in the kind of mainstream media, it's easy to get hooked up on one type of story, and if your story doesn't fit that pattern, it's easy to feel like you're the one that's wrong, rather than acknowledging that we all have such different stories and experiences, and loneliness is a huge challenge in our society anyway, and will have been exacerbated for some people by being on their own. I think from my own experience, what I recommend is keeping on doing whatever the tiny things are that help you to feel better. I set myself a goal, for example, of having one conversation a day where I tell somebody how I'm really feeling, where instead of having that conversation that somebody goes, "How are you?" Fine is not an answer to "how are you?" So I have at times been really strict with myself at setting myself the goal of telling somebody how I am really feeling. Walking is massively important to me. Doing some form of exercise like yoga or, hot, sweaty exercise that really shifts my state. I know that dancing or singing, something like that really works for a lot of people. Watching a comedy, something that helps you lighten up. Basically, I'm just saying that there is not usually any one dramatic thing that makes a difference when you're feeling lonely and isolated. It's doing the tiny things like preventative medicine and letting that effect build up over time. And also, if you're feeling really stuck and hopeless, talking to your GP. reaching out and asking for help, and ideally asking for help before you really have that feeling of being desperate. Trying to name those feelings of loneliness and isolation before they get worse. New Dawn Counselling, Sue Stevenson. Hi, hope you guys are still here when I'm catching up with your names. I think my screen's stuck. The Positive Planner, great advice. Well, thank you. I'm glad that might have helped a little bit. Hi, Shira. Shira Biggie, I think. My name is Mary Fenwick. I write the Agony Aunt column for Psychologies magazine. So every month, once a month, I answer or give my perspective on 3 different questions. Hi, Shira, wave. And once a week, I'm here doing an Instagram live to see if we have any Psychologies magazine readers, fans, friends, people who are just a bit curious. Hi, Kerry, thanks for the wave. You're really welcome to bring your questions, your stories, your experiences. Today, I'm talking about how we cope when something is not in the plan, and how we, in fact, I hardly ever use the word cope, I must say, how we deal with it when something is not in the plan. I don't like cope because that implies that people are just kind of just getting by, and much as I have days where I feel like I'm just gritting my teeth and getting through it, my aspiration is, hi Naresh, I'm not doing the joining in with live video at the moment. I'm going to have a chat with Susie, the overall editor, to see if that's something that we're going to do in the future. But it's not something we're doing at the moment. If you've got a question or comment, would you mind typing it and sharing it with me that way? Just at the moment. We'll see. We might change as we go on. Talking about how we cope with things not being in the plan. I'm interested in people's experiences of how it has been, maybe going back to something that felt maybe a little bit more like normal this week. Honestly, does anybody know what normal is anymore? We've had just such a massive challenge to our perceptions of normal. And Naresh is saying that they might drop a question in for us. And there's an upside down emoji from Kerry. Completely. Yeah, everything does feel completely upside down. As I said at the start, I've got 4 children. One of them has got stuck in Georgia, the Republic of Georgia. That wasn't in his plan. The 2 younger ones have aged 22 and 20, have both ended up coming back to live at home for periods of time, which was definitely not in the plan for either of them. And the eldest, my stepdaughter, she's on furlough, and that was not in her plan. And she was on a whole, she is by far the most planning orientated person in our family. And her life tends to be planned quite far in advance. She had a law job. She was due to start another job in September. The September start date has been pushed back to at least December. In her boyfriend's case, similar situation, and his start date has been pushed back to maybe April next year. So talking about how we cope with things which are not in the plan. I've talked a little bit about the general advice of keeping up small things, whatever the small things are that give you joy, lightness, relief, tiny bit of laughter, anything like that. Physical exercise, connection, telling somebody how you truly, truly feel, experimenting with creativity. All of these things in their own small way can help. I've got a little bit of a formula that I thought I'd share with you, which is reverse the focus. Wine, it is tricky though, because fundamentally alcohol is a depressant, isn't it? So that is the challenge with wine. Literally one of my closest friends grew up in a vineyard, so I love the kind of whole story and taste and experience of wine, and I've been pretty strict with myself though in lockdown. So the formula that I wanted to talk about in general for rebuilding your confidence when something's happened that's... Am I a fitness coach? No, I'm not a fitness coach. I am broadly speaking, my interest in coaching is positive psychology. I did my coaching training with, it's called the it's called Mailer Campbell, and my supervisor was Professor Carol Kaufman from the Institute of Coaching at Harvard. So my coaching is all about performance at work in particular, mindset, leadership, getting the best out of yourself and a team. And with quite an interest in positive psychology, growing out of the work of Martin Seligman and also Barbara Fredrickson. Some people will have heard me talk about her before. So this is actually a set of techniques that I learned from Carol Kaufman. And Carol has as her background that she used to work in trauma as a doctor. Yes, I do. I work as a coach, a one-to-one coach, particularly for women in leadership and teams at work. And but the basis of what I do, I'm originally from New Zealand. I've been living in the UK for about 30 years and I've got dual British and New Zealand nationality. Do I do counselling as well? No. Some of my words are getting cut off. That in fact could be my phone. Sorry. I don't do counselling. I am not a therapist. I am a journalist and a coach. And so when I'm giving people feedback on their questions, it is generally from the perspective of building up their sense of their own resources. Thank you for telling me that my words are getting cut out. I'm sorry about that. We'll try and solve that better for the next one. I'll just wrap up by sharing the general approach to things that I use when I need to reset for myself. And that is reverse the focus. Am I working in a hospital? No, I'm not working in a hospital. No, I'm working from home as a journalist and coach, and I'm running quite a few workshops for people who are still at work, including British Red Cross, for example. I love the magazine. I love your work and energy. Thank you, Macca in West Norwood. That's lovely to hear. The formula that I wanted to talk about for dealing with stuff that is not in our plan is, number one, reverse the focus. Look for what is actually going well. I'm laughing because my bike got stolen last week, which was obviously not in my plan. And how was the atmosphere there? Related to knockdown. Where I live, the atmosphere is a little bit cautious. We are lucky enough to live in Woking, which is a town about half an hour by train outside of London, and there's quite a lot of green space. So from where I live, we can walk on paths which are not right by the road and that kind of thing. So we're pretty lucky from that point of view. I do feel really conscious of people who can't get out and people who are a bit trapped. Having been a single parent myself for 12 years now, since my husband died. If anybody heard the divorce story, I remarried and then unfortunately my second husband died. So I feel very conscious of the fact that what I see and what I perceive to be the atmosphere may not be other people's experience. I'm going through the things I run through in my own head. Thank you, Kerry. Yeah. The things I run through in my own head when things are not going according to plan. And number one is to focus on what is actually going well. And I was talking about getting my bike stolen and what people health related for COVID in New Zealand. I'm not in New Zealand at the moment. I'm in the UK. So you probably know about as much about New Zealand as I do. When my bike got stolen last week, the way in which I was able to reverse the focus or focus on something different was to remind myself that at least nobody was hurt. And in the circumstance where my bike got stolen, it had been my daughter using it, I was just relieved that nobody had attacked her to try and get the bike. So I was able to say to myself, if that had happened, if somebody had attacked her, I'd have been thinking, take my bike, I don't care, it's only a thing. Sorry, I've not hear this. It sounds as if there is a problem with the sound. So, talking about my formula for dealing with things that are not in the plan. Reverse the focus. Know your own strengths. Just remind yourself of the things that you're good at and give you energy. Reframing things really helps. I guess all of this forms part of reframing, actually. It's all part of sort of questioning how I'm telling the story to myself. Oh, can hear me fine now. Yay. So I guess in a way I'm talking, this whole thing is, thank you for giving a reply, Naresh. You're very welcome. It's lovely. It's really nice when people interact. That's what I'm here for. Here for people to ask questions, tell me their stories. So the step after reversing the focus is knowing your own strengths. And after that, you use those two to help you build hope. Because the hardest thing is when you're not finding any glimmers of hope. And hope keeps us going. So people talk a lot about grit and determination. Hope probably keeps us going for even longer than just gritting our teeth and getting on with it. So if you're able to construct something hopeful a little bit in your future, that will always help when dealing with something that's not in the plan. Other things I do when something happens that's not in the plan is remind myself that I've got a positive energy about me and good vibes. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, well, I guess I've had a lot of practice. And yeah, I'm lucky enough to be somebody who other people ask for advice. So I feel, I have to practice what I preach, do my absolute best to do what I've described. Reverse the focus on what's going well, know my own strengths, and have a positive attitude. Definitely not ignoring the bad, allowing myself to have those difficult feelings. Hope is indeed everything. The other thing that I've found helps me when I'm coming up against stuff that is not in the plan is to remind myself of other times where something's come up that has not been in the plan, and never that even though I might not be able to see the solution at the moment, there will be a solution. And if I hang around long enough, the solution will emerge. Hard to remember when you're in the grips of something that feels like it's fallen apart. Nice to talk with you, hear the people and communicate with them. Yeah, oh, thank you, Naresh. And where are you joining from? I'm just about to ring off, in fact, but I'll just wait to see if I've got an answer to where, because Naresh has been very chatty on the comments this evening, and it would be interesting to know where they're from. So my name is Mary Fenwick. I write the Agony Art column for Psychologies magazine. If you're interested in getting a copy of Psychologies magazine delivered to you, to your door, have a look for the link in the bio, and you'll see the latest offers there to do with the magazine. Psychologies magazine, the UK's biggest and best-selling mindful living magazine, and I write the Agony Art column in it once a month, and once a week I'm here with an Instagram live offering you the opportunity to wish I'd caught the whole thing. You're great, I always read you. Oh, thank you. Just subscribed for 2 years. Kerry's just subscribed for 2 years. Oh, well, do you know what? The other thing is, I also always know whenever I come on an Instagram live, I will come off it feeling better than I came on. Great to put a face to the name. Thank you. Positive planner. That's so lovely. Thank you. I think I look a bit different, although because that photo is like 7 years old now. I've been talking about the photo in the magazine anyway. Yeah, I'm not a natural blonde. I hate to disappoint everybody, but I'm going in the direction of the brownie blonde as I get older and greyer. This is a lovely format to meet people, so I hope that you might put it in your diary, and remember to keep an eye out. 5:30 on Tuesdays, I will be here ready to answer your questions live. And in the meantime, if you would like a copy of Psychologies